She raised her son alone, investing every penny, every dream, to see him shine. Everything crumbles when she's considered too embarrassing for her daughter-in-law's birthday. The money that would guarantee the couple's luxurious life transforms into a silent cry of rupture. Now Helen doesn't want to be accepted anymore, she wants to be remembered. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Helen adjusted her glasses on the tip of her nose while threading the needle with dexterity. Her fingers, marked by time and small healed cuts, moved with the precision of someone who has been sewing for more than 3 decades. The small workshop at the back of the house was her refuge, a place where she transformed fabrics into sustenance and other people's dreams into tangible reality. A prom dress rested on the mannequin. It was for the neighbor's daughter, who would pay in 3 installments. Helen knew she would probably only receive the first one, but she couldn't say no. Perhaps because she too had dreamed of a graduation ceremony that never happened. When the clock struck 5 in the afternoon, she put away the needles and organized the scraps. Ryan would arrive at any moment. Her son, now a promising 28-year-old lawyer at a renowned firm, still came for dinner on Wednesdays. It was the only day Helen allowed herself to finish work earlier. In the small but impeccably clean kitchen, she prepared the lasagna that Ryan had loved since childhood. The recipe had been perfected over the years, layer by layer, just as she had built her son's life, with meticulous sacrifice and unconditional love. The doorbell rang at 6:15. Helen wiped her hands on the apron she had embroidered herself and rushed to the door, quickly adjusting the grey hairs that insisted on escaping from her simple bun. "Ryan, so good to see you, son." She opened her arms for a hug that didn't fully come. Ryan gave 2 awkward pats on her back and entered, looking at his watch. "Hi, Mom, sorry I'm late. Complicated meeting today." Helen noticed the impeccable suit, the shiny shoes, the expensive cologne. She smiled with pride. Every piece of that elegant man had been sewn with her renunciations. "No problem. The lasagna is almost ready. Would you like some juice while you wait?" Ryan nodded distractedly while checking messages on his phone. Helen served the homemade orange juice that he didn't even touch. "I have news," he finally announced, putting his phone away. His eyes sparkled in a way Helen hadn't seen since he won his first oratory competition in high school. "What is it, son?" Well, it's about Caitlin. We're living together." Helen blinked, processing the information. Caitlin had been Ryan's girlfriend for 8 months. Helen had met her only once at a quick and formal lunch. She remembered the young woman's glances at the small apartment, as if evaluating each object, each corner with discreet displeasure. "Oh, that's great," said Helen, trying to sound excited. "And when did this happen?" 2 weeks ago. We rented an apartment on the south side. 3 bedrooms, gourmet balcony, it's quite spacious." "That's wonderful, son. Why didn't you tell me before?" Ryan fidgeted with the napkin, avoiding her gaze. "It all happened very quickly. Caitlin found the place. Her parents helped with the down payment. You know how these things are." Helen knew, or rather, she imagined. She had never been able to provide down payments on apartments for Ryan. Every penny earned from sewing had gone toward private school tuition, English courses, and brand-name clothes that he insisted he needed to not feel different from his classmates. "Well, when am I going to see your new place?" Ryan finally took a sip of juice. Soon, we're still setting everything up. Caitlin is very demanding with decoration." The oven timer rang and Helen got up to take out the lasagna. While serving the plates, she heard her son's phone ring. He answered immediately. "Hi, honey. No, I'm at my mom's house. Yes, that dinner I told you about. It won't take long, I promise. Love you." Helen placed the plate in front of him, pretending not to have heard the conversation. She sat down at the table and waited for him to put his phone away. "How's work?" she asked, trying to rebuild normalcy. "I'm getting promoted next month," Ryan replied with a restrained smile. "I'll be handling bigger cases, important clients. I'm so proud, son. Your father would be so happy." The mention of Robert, who had left when Ryan was only 5 years old, brought a momentary silence. Helen still kept the wedding ring in, a wooden box along with the few pictures they had together. "Mom, I need to ask you something." Helen smiled. She had known how to recognize that tone since Ryan was little and wanted an expensive toy. "What is it, son?" "It's just that, with the promotion, I need to present myself better. New suits, maybe a better car." Helen put down her fork. "You want a loan?" Ryan took a deep breath. "It's not exactly a loan. Remember that money that Dad left? That you never wanted to use? I think now would be a good time to invest in my future." Helen felt a tightness in her chest. That money was her only security, religiously saved for an emergency, for when she could no longer work. Robert had left a small life insurance policy that she had never touched. "Son, that money—" "Mom," Ryan interrupted, "it's not like you're going to use it for something important. And it's an investment. When I'm earning more, I can even help you out." Helen observed her son. His eyes, so similar to Robert's, shone with the same determination that had won her over decades ago. "I'll think about it, son." Ryan smiled, as if he had already heard a yes. Dinner continued with Ryan talking about the new office, important colleagues, expensive restaurants. Helen listened, smiling at the right moments, asking questions at appropriate intervals. In her heart, however, something was silently aching. When Ryan said goodbye, it was barely 7:30. A quick kiss on the cheek, another glance at his watch. "Next Wednesday I won't be able to come, Mom. I have an important event at the office." "That's okay, son. Go ahead." After the door closed, Helen returned to her workshop. Under the dim light of the lamp, she picked up a piece of blue silk, the same shade as Ryan's eyes when he was a baby. Her fingers caressed the fabric while silent tears ran down her prematurely aged face. She took the scissors and began cutting a new pattern. This was how she had always faced pain, transforming it into creation. Each stitch was a small resistance against the emptiness that was growing between her and the one who was her only family. On the table beside her, the phone vibrated. It was a message from Ryan. "Think kindly about what I asked you, Mom. I need to give an answer to the seller by Friday." Helen took a deep breath and returned to sewing. The night would be long, like so many others when she had sewn dreams for others, while her own remained tucked away in drawers never opened. 2 weeks later, Helen was at the bank, her trembling hands holding the paperwork for the transfer. She had decided to help Ryan, not just with part of the money as he had asked, but with almost all of her savings. "He's my only son," she justified to herself. "Who else would I save this for?" The bank manager, Mrs. Martha, who had known her for years, gave her a concerned look. "Are you sure, Mrs. Helen, it's a considerable amount?" "Yes, I am," she responded automatically, even feeling a knot in her stomach. "My son is buying his first apartment." While waiting for the documents to be processed, Helen looked at the small package in her purse. It was an embroidered picture she had made during 3 consecutive nights. The silhouette of a house with the phrase, "Home is where love lives," meticulously worked with delicate stitches. It would be the first present for Ryan and Caitlin's new home. Her cell phone rang. It was a message from her son. "Is everything set for the transfer today?" Helen typed a quick yes, followed by a heart that received no response. She put the phone away and looked out the bank window. Outside, hurried people walked by without noticing the small grey-haired lady who was about to hand over the fruit of a lifetime of work. Another message arrived. This time she opened it with a smile, imagining it would be Ryan thanking her. But the text froze her heart. "Helen, this is Caitlin. I wanted to ask you a favor. Tomorrow is my birthday, and we're having a small gathering at home. Ryan said you'd be coming, but I'd prefer if you didn't. My parents and some important colleagues will be there, and it would be a bit embarrassing. I'm sure you understand. We can arrange something, just the 3 of us, another time." The phone almost slipped from her hands. Helen reread the message 3 times as if the words could change meaning. Embarrassing. The word echoed in her mind like a cracked bell. "Ma'am? Is everything okay?" The manager's voice brought her back to reality. "I need a minute," she murmured, standing up with difficulty. In the bank's bathroom, Helen faced her reflection in the mirror. She saw the deep wrinkles around her eyes, the calloused hands, the simple dress she had sewn herself. She saw the woman who had been made invisible over the years, first by responsibility, then by the convenience of others. She remembered the only time she had visited the office where Ryan worked, how he had quickly introduced her as my mom without mentioning her name, how he had taken her to lunch at a restaurant far away, not the one next to the office where he might encounter colleagues. Helen closed her eyes. Images of Ryan as a child came to her mind. The boy who cried when she was late picking him up from school, who drew hearts on handmade cards, who slept holding onto her shirt when he had nightmares. Where was that boy now? She returned to the counter with firm steps. Before the manager could say anything, Helen spoke in a voice that didn't sound like her own. "I want to cancel the transfer." "How so, Mrs. Helen?" "But everything was ready." "I've changed my mind. I'm going to keep my money where it is." The manager looked at her in surprise, but nodded. "As you wish. I just need you to sign this cancellation form." As she signed, Helen felt a strange relief. It was as if she were signing her own declaration of independence. She left the bank without looking back. On the way home, she bought a vanilla ice cream, something she hadn't done in years, and sat on a park bench. Her cell phone wouldn't stop vibrating, but she didn't bother checking it. When she finally got home, there were 6 missed calls from Ryan and a message. "Mum, what happened?" "The bank said you cancelled everything. Call me urgently." Helen placed the phone on the table and went to her workshop. She looked at the fabrics organized by color, at the sewing machine that had accompanied her for decades, at the photographs. On the walls, almost all of Ryan at different ages. Calmly, she took the package from her purse and untied the ribbon. She looked at the embroidery she had made with such care and felt a tear trickle down. Then she did something she never imagined. She opened the drawer, put away the embroidery, and locked it. That gift, like her savings, would stay with her. Tuntatier's doorbell rang furiously at 8 in the evening. Helen already knew who it was before opening the door. Ryan entered like a hurricane, his face red with anger. "What did you do? Do you have any idea of the problem you've caused? We've already signed the contract, Mom. There are penalties, there are deadlines." Helen gestured calmly toward the couch. "Sit down, son." "I don't want to sit. I want to understand why you did this to me." "To me," repeated Helen softly. "That's the issue, Ryan. Always to me, never to us." Ryan stopped, confused by his mother's tone. "What are you talking about? I received a message from Caitlin today, saying that my presence at her birthday would be embarrassing." Ryan looked away, running his hand through his perfectly aligned hair. "She didn't mean that." "You misunderstood." "No, son." For the first time, I understood perfectly. Helen sat down, feeling strangely calm. It was as if something had broken inside her, but instead of pain, she felt only clarity. "Why are you ashamed of me, Ryan?" The question hung in the air like a heavy fabric. Ryan opened his mouth to deny, but no sound came out. "I've seen how you introduce me to your friends, how you avoid taking me to places where you might meet your colleagues, how you're always in a hurry when you're here." "That's ridiculous, Mom. I never—" "Ryan," Helen interrupted firmly, "have you looked at this apartment today at any point? Do you know what's on the walls? Your photos? Your diplomas? Your achievements? I lived for you. Every penny I earned was for you. I never traveled. I never had a hobby that couldn't be turned into money for your education. And now when you finally made it, I've become inconvenient." Ryan sank into the couch, his face a mask of conflict. "It's not like that. It's just that Caitlin comes from a different reality. She's used to other things, other environments, and I don't fit into those environments," Helen completed. "I don't fit into the life you built, partly thanks to my sacrifice." A heavy silence settled between them. Outside, children could be heard playing in the street, a world distant from the tension that filled that room. "The money was for our future," Ryan finally said, his voice lower, "so that we could have stability, build a family." "And me? Where do I fit in that future? Ryan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said it all. My money will stay with me, son. It's all I have for my old age. If you and Caitlin can't buy an apartment without my help, maybe you should look for something more modest. You don't understand. That's not how it works. In our social circle. Your social circle, Helen corrected. My circle has always been very small. Basically you. Ryan stood up, furious. You're being selfish after everything I've done for you. Helen almost laughed at the irony. What exactly have you done for me, Ryan? Besides rushed visits on Wednesdays? His phone rang. On the screen, Helen saw Caitlin's name appear. Ryan answered, immediately turning his back. Hi, honey. No, I haven't resolved it yet. I'm trying, but she's being difficult. Yes, I know we need to give an answer tomorrow. I'll do my best. When he hung up, he turned to his mother with pleading eyes. Please, Mom. This is very important to me, to us. Ooh. Helen stood up, feeling every year of her 58 years weighing on her shoulders. My answer is still no, Ryan, and I think you'd better leave now. Mom. Please, son. Go home. To your home with Caitlin. And when you're ready to treat me as your mother and not as your bank, we can talk again. Ryan grabbed his coat, his eyes shining with anger and frustration. You'll regret this. Maybe, Helen replied calmly. But for the first time in decades, I'm making a choice for myself, not for you. When the door slammed shut, Helen didn't cry. Instead, she went to her workshop, turned on the old radio, and tuned into a music station. A romantic song from the '80s was playing, one of those she used to listen to while sewing baby clothes when Ryan was little. She sat at the sewing machine and looked at the red fabric she had bought weeks ago. She had always wanted to make a dress for herself, but never found time between orders. It's time, she murmured to herself, beginning to draw a pattern. Her fingers moved with new energy, as if they were sewing not just a dress but a renewed version of herself. 3 months passed since the confrontation with Ryan. Helen had no news from her son, apart from some formal messages on specific dates. On her birthday, she received only a dry, "Happy birthday, Mom," with no emojis or questions about how she was doing. She responded with a simple, "Thank you, son," following the same distant tone he had established. The initial pain had transformed into something different. It was no longer an open cut, but a scar that sometimes tingled, reminding her of its existence. Helen discovered that for the first time in decades, she had time. Time that was previously filled with worries about Ryan, with extra work to ensure he had the best of everything, with sleepless nights thinking about his future. On a rainy Tuesday, Helen was organizing her workshop when she found a crumpled flyer at the bottom of a drawer. It was for a senior dance class at the community center in the neighborhood. She vaguely remembered receiving it months ago, saving it thinking, someday, maybe. Like so many other things she had indefinitely postponed. She checked the date. Classes were on Wednesdays, the day that was previously sacred for dinner with Ryan. She smiled ironically and decided she would go to the first class the next morning. The community center was a simple building, with walls that needed a new paint job and faded posters. Announcing various activities, Helen entered timidly, clutching her purse to her chest. First time, a white-haired lady with a warm smile approached. "I'm Gloria, the dance group coordinator." "Helen," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Yes, first time. Actually, I've never danced formally." Gloria laughed, a crystalline sound that immediately relaxed Helen. "None of us here are professionals, dear. We dance for joy, for movement, for companionship. Come, I'll introduce you to the group." The hall was spacious, with mirrors on one of the walls and support bars. About 15 people, mostly women, were chatting animatedly while stretching. Helen felt strangely at home, as if that space had been waiting for her for a long time. When the music started, a slow, rhythmic country song. Helen hesitated, but Gloria took her hand and pulled her to the center. "Just feel the music, Helen. Your body knows what to do." And to her surprise, it really did. Decades of sewing had given her movements a natural fluidity. Soon she was twirling, smiling, feeling her body awakening from a long sleep. 2 hours later, sweaty and breathless, Helen sat on a bench in the locker room, amazed at the sensation of being alive that coursed through her veins. "You dance very well," commented a woman beside her. Tall, slim, with an elegant posture that betrayed years of practice. "I'm Teresa, Helen, and thank you, but it's my first class." "Really? I would never have guessed. You have a natural rhythm." The two started talking. Teresa was a retired teacher, widowed for 5 years. She had 3 children, all living in other states, and 5 grandchildren she saw only on important holidays. "Sometimes I feel invisible to them," Teresa confided as they walked together to the exit. "As if I were just the grandma who sends presents at Christmas." Helen felt a tightness in her chest, recognizing the feeling. "I understand perfectly. Would you like to have a coffee? I know a great place nearby." Helen hesitated for a moment. Her routine for years had been the same. Work, home, more work. Going out for a spontaneous coffee was not in her repertoire. "Why not?" she answered, surprising herself. The cafe was cozy, with wooden tables and old photographs on the walls. While they had cappuccinos and shared a piece of pie, Helen and Teresa discovered they had much more in common than they imagined. "I raised my son alone too," Teresa told her. "My husband stayed with me, but it was as if he wasn't there. He drank a lot, you know. He would go for weeks without coming home." Helen nodded, understanding. "I dedicated my life to my children. I gave up everything. Career, friends, hobbies. And you know what I discovered? That this doesn't guarantee they'll reciprocate in the same way." "Exactly," murmured Helen, feeling understood for the first time in years. When they left the cafe, they exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet again. Helen returned home with a strange but pleasant sensation. Lightness. In the days that followed, something changed in her routine. Besides the dance classes on Wednesdays, she began attending a book club on Fridays that Teresa had recommended. There she met Marianne, a 65-year-old writer who, after raising 4 children, decided to pursue her dream of writing and published her first book at 60. "It's never too late to start living, Helen," Marianne said in one of the meetings. "Life doesn't end when the children grow up. In fact, it might just be beginning." These words were etched in her mind. Helen began making small changes. She painted her nails red, something she had never done, bought new clothes that weren't just practical but beautiful, enrolled in an online contemporary fashion design course to improve her work in the workshop. One afternoon, she received an unexpected visit from Mrs. Carmen, her oldest neighbor. "I came to see if everything is all right," said the 80-year-old woman with a concerned look. "It's been a while since I've seen your son around here." Helen smiled, offering coffee. "We're giving each other space. He's building his life with his girlfriend." Mrs. Carmen, who had known Helen since Ryan was a baby, raised a suspicious eyebrow. "And you? How are you building your life?" The question caught Helen by surprise. She had never thought in those terms, her life, separate from Ryan's. "I'm learning to dance," she answered with a shy smile. Mrs. Carmen laughed, clapping her hands. "It's about time." "Did you know that your Robert, God rest his soul, once told me that you danced like nobody else when you were young? He said he fell in love with you at a party when he saw you dancing." Helen felt her face flush. She couldn't remember the last time someone had mentioned something Robert had said about her that wasn't related to her ability to care for Ryan. "He said that?" "Yes, he did. He said you had music in your body, that it was as if you floated." That night, alone in her room, Helen opened the box where she kept the few mementos of Robert. Among yellowed letters and faded photographs, she found a note she hadn't seen in years. "To my brown-eyed dancer who taught me that life can be a dance." Silent tears ran down her face, not just for the husband she had lost, but for the lost time, for the dreams put away, for the internal music she had silenced to hear only the needs of others. The next morning, she made a decision. She would renovate her workshop. It would no longer be just a workplace, but a truly personal space. She used part of the money she had almost given to Ryan to buy new equipment, better quality fabrics, an ergonomic chair that wouldn't hurt her back after hours of work. And she did more. She placed an ad in the neighborhood newspaper offering sewing classes. Transform fabrics into dreams. Learn from someone who's been doing it for 30 years. To her surprise, the phone didn't stop ringing. Women of all ages wanted to learn. Teenagers interested in customizing clothes, mothers wanting to save money, ladies looking for a pastime. In 2 weeks, Helen had a group of 8 students who came twice a week. The workshop, previously silent except for the hum of the sewing machine, was now filled with conversations, laughter, the sound of several machines working simultaneously. "You should charge more, you know," commented Julia, one of her students, a 30-year-old designer. "Your techniques are incredible. Nobody teaches like this nowadays." Helen had never thought of her knowledge as something valuable. For her, sewing was just what she knew how to do, what she needed to do to survive. "I think you should create a page on social media," suggested another student. "Show your work, promote your classes. I bet you'd have many more interested people." The idea seemed absurd at first. Helen barely knew how to use her cell phone beyond the basic functions. But as she was discovering, it was never too late to learn. With Julia's help, she created an Instagram profile, Helen's Atelier, tradition and art in every stitch. She began posting photos of her old works, from party dresses to children's clothes, from elaborate curtains to patchwork quilts. To her surprise, the profile grew quickly. People commented, shared, asked about orders and classes. A local artisanal clothing brand got in touch, interested in a partnership. "See," said Julia proudly, "you have a unique talent. The world needs to know it." Helen looked at her hands, still agile despite her age, still capable of transforming a piece of fabric into art. For the first time, she felt pride not just in what her hands had done for her son, but in what they had created for the pure pleasure of creating. A month later, she received an unexpected invitation. The city's Artisans Association was organizing a local talent fair and wanted her to exhibit her work and give a workshop on basic sewing techniques. Helen hesitated. Exposing herself like this, putting herself at the forefront, had never been her style. She had always preferred to stay behind the scenes, sewing in silence while others shone. "You need to go," insisted Teresa when they met for their weekly coffee. "It's an incredible opportunity. What if no one is interested? What if they find my work outdated?" Teresa took her hands, looking into her eyes. "Helen, you've spent your entire life hiding. First behind your husband, then behind your son. It's time to show who Helen is, the artist, the creator, the woman." That night, while finishing a silk dress for a special client, Helen made her decision. She would participate in the fair. Not only participate, but give her best. In the weeks that followed, she worked like never before. She created new pieces, experimented with different techniques, dared with colors and textures she had always admired, but never used in her commercial work. The result was a collection that told her story. Dresses that spoke of renunciation and rediscoveries, blouses that sang about second chances, skirts that danced with the promise of new beginnings. And at the center of it all, a special piece, a long cloak made of scraps of all the fabrics that had passed through her hands over the decades. Each piece had a story, a memory. The blue of Ryan's first overalls, the white of the dress she had made for his baptism, the green of the curtain from their first house, the red of the dress she had never worn to her son's graduation party. When she finished, she looked at the cloak with tears in her eyes. It was more than a piece of clothing. It was the map of her life, sewn stitch by stitch, with all the love, all the pain, all the hope she had carried over the years. The day of the fair dawned sunny, as if the sky itself was celebrating Helen's rebirth. With the help of Teresa and 2 of her students, she set up a simple but elegant stall. In the center, the patchwork cloak was displayed on a mannequin, illuminated to highlight every detail, every stitch meticulously made. "It's beautiful," whispered Marianne, who had appeared to give moral support. "It looks like it tells a story." "And it does," replied Helen, adjusting a final detail. "Mine." The fair opened at 10 in the morning. At first, few people stopped at Helen's stall. Most went to more colorful booths with more eye-catching crafts. But gradually, something began to happen. People who had passed by directly returned, attracted by the patchwork cloak that shone under the sun like a stained glass window. "Did you make this?" asked an elegant lady, reverently touching the fabric. "It's extraordinary. Each piece has her story," explained Helen, surprising herself with her own voice. Confident, proud. "This blue here, for example, was from my son's first overalls. And this gold was from a party dress I made for my neighbor's daughter." The woman listened, fascinated, calling other people over. Soon, a small group formed around Helen, who found herself telling stories she had never shared. About the sleepless nights sewing to deliver orders on time, about how she had taught herself complicated techniques, about the pleasure she felt seeing a flat fabric transform into something three-dimensional, alive. "Do you give classes?" asked a young woman with colorful hair. "I'd love to learn from you." "Yes, twice a week at my workshop." "And how much do you charge?" Helen mentioned the amount, still modest. The young woman laughed. "Just that. Downtown teachers with half your experience charge triple." Before the day ended, Helen had a waiting list for her classes and orders that would keep her workshop busy for months. More importantly, she had recognition of her talent, not as Ryan's mother, not as Robert's widow, but as Helen, the artist, the creator. "I think I need help," she commented to Teresa as they packed up the pieces at the end of the day. "I won't be able to handle everything alone." "Maybe it's time to expand," suggested her friend. "Transform the workshop into a small school. You have the space." The idea fermented in her mind during the entire journey back home. She was so absorbed in possibilities that she didn't immediately notice the car parked in front of her house, a car she knew well. Ryan was sitting on the front steps, his face downcast, his shoulders slumped, an image that strongly contrasted with the impeccable executive who had visited her house months ago. "Son?" He looked up, and Helen saw something she hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "Hi, Mom." They stood in silence for a moment, like actors who had forgotten their lines. "Would you like to come in?" Helen finally offered. Ryan nodded, following her inside. The house was different. There were new plants, colorful cushions on the couch, a bookshelf with books that weren't there before. "It looks nice," he commented, seeming genuinely surprised. "Thank you. I made some changes." Helen prepared coffee, not out of obligation as before, but because she wanted a moment to organize her thoughts. When she returned to the living room, Ryan was looking at a new picture on the wall, a photograph of Helen with her dance group, all smiling, arms intertwined. "I didn't know you danced." "There are many things about me you don't know, son." There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement. Ryan lowered his eyes. "I came to apologize." Helen sat down, indicating that he should do the same. "Caitlin left me," he continued. "She said it wouldn't work out, that we have different values, that she can't deal with my family." "I'm sorry," said Helen, and it was sincere. Regardless of how she felt about Caitlin, she didn't wish suffering on her son. "The apartment, we couldn't buy it. The contract penalty was high. I'm having financial problems." Helen felt the old protective instinct awaken, the desire to solve everything, to sacrifice herself again. But something inside her had changed. "And what do you plan to do?" Ryan seemed surprised by the question. He clearly expected an immediate offer of help. "I don't know. I thought about selling the car, renting a smaller place, maybe asking for a loan from the bank." Helen nodded, taking a sip of coffee. "Those seem like sensible options." Ryan looked at her, confused. "You're not going to help me?" "In what way would you like me to help, Ryan?" He looked away, embarrassed. "Financially, I guess." "I see, and did you come here specifically for that? Or also because you missed me?" The question hung in the air like a needle suspended over a delicate fabric. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I missed you," he finally admitted, his voice breaking. "I missed you so much, Mom." Something inside Helen warmed, but not to the point of melting all the layers of protection she had built over the last few months. "I missed you too, son." But things have changed. I've changed. Ryan looked around, as if only now truly noticing the transformations in the environment and in his mother. You seem different. I'm different. I'm living, Ryan. After decades of existing only for you, I'm finally living for myself. She told him about the dance classes, the book club, the new friends, the renovated workshop, the students, the craft fair. She spoke with an animation Ryan hadn't seen since he was a child, and she told him stories before bed. "That's amazing, Mom," he said when she finished, and he seemed sincere. "I never thought you could... that I could have a life beyond being your mother," Helen completed with a gentle smile. "Neither did I." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It wasn't tense or accusatory, but contemplative. "Can I ask you a question?" Ryan asked. "Sure. Do you hate me? For what I did, for the way I treated you?" Helen sighed, looking at her son, the boy who had grown up in her arms, the man who had distanced himself from her, the complex and imperfect human being who was in front of her now. "No, Ryan, I don't hate you. There were moments when I was very hurt, disappointed. But hate? Never. You're my son. Part of my heart is always with you." Ryan let out a contained sob, as if an internal dam had finally given way. "I was such an idiot, Mom, so ungrateful. I let myself be carried away by things that don't matter. Status, appearances. I allowed people like Caitlin to make me ashamed of where I came from, of who I really am." Helen extended her hand, touching her son's face. "We all make mistakes. Ryan, the question is, what do we do after them? I want to fix things between us. I want to be your son again. I want to get to know this new Helen." She smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I want that too, but with one condition." "What?" "That our relationship be based on mutual respect. I'm not just your mother. I'm a woman with dreams, talents, friends, a life of my own. And you're not just my son. You're an adult man, responsible for your choices and consequences." Ryan nodded, wiping away his tears. "That seems fair." "As for the money," Helen continued, "I won't simply give it to you, but I can offer you a loan, with clear conditions and a payment plan." "You don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted. "Not out of obligation, but by choice, because I love you. Only now love has healthy boundaries." That night, they had dinner together. Not the traditional Wednesday lasagna, but a new recipe Helen had learned from Marianne. They talked about his work, about her classes, about plans for the future. It was a conversation between adults, not between a self-sacrificing mother and an entitled son. When Ryan said goodbye, he hugged Helen for a long time. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. Especially for not giving up on me even when I deserved it." "Mothers never give up," she replied, "but they learn to love in different ways." In the months that followed, a new routine was established. Ryan visited on Sundays, no longer out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. Sometimes he brought friends, colleagues from work, not to impress them, but to introduce them to the talented mother he had. Helen continued expanding her world. The workshop transformed into a small sewing school with students of all ages. She hired an assistant, a talented young woman who dreamed of becoming a designer. Her creations began appearing at larger fairs, in small local boutiques, in craft magazines. On an autumn afternoon, while working on a new piece, she received an unexpected call. It was from a cultural center in the capital, inviting her to exhibit her collection of patchwork cloaks in a showcase about crafts as personal narrative. "They want me to give a talk about my creative process," she told Ryan, still in disbelief. "That's wonderful, Mom. You'll accept, won't you?" Helen looked at the workshop, now a vibrant space, full of colors, voices, life. At the photographs on the walls, not just of Ryan, but of her friends, her students, precious moments of her new existence. At her hands, still calloused, but now creating for pleasure, not just out of necessity. "I will," she answered with a confident smile. "I have many stories to tell." Ryan smiled, proud. "You know what I admire most about you, Mom? your capacity for transformation, like a fabric that completely changes in your hands. Helen laughed, realizing the irony. I spent my life transforming fabrics, but it took me time to understand that I myself could be transformed, that I could stop being just the seamstress of other people's lives to embroider my own story. On the eve of the exhibition, Helen was in her workshop giving the final stitches to the cloak that would be the centerpiece of the show. This one was different from the first. It didn't just tell stories of the past, but also of the present and future. It had scraps from the clothes she had worn to dance classes, pieces of fabric she had received from her students, vibrant colors that represented her new phase. In the center, sewn with golden thread, was a small red heart, the same design that Ryan used to draw on notes when he was a child. Teresa entered silently, observing her friend work. Ready for tomorrow? Helen looked at the finished cloak, at the workshop full of life, at the friend who had become an essential part of her days. She thought of the son who now saw her as a complete person, not just as his mother, of the students who admired her, as a mentor and artist, of the dreams that belatedly were beginning to come true. I am, she replied with a serene smile, more ready than I've ever been. And she truly was. Ready to show the world that there is no age to start over, that there is no fabric so worn that it cannot be transformed into something beautiful, that there is no life so dedicated to others that it cannot, finally, be lived for oneself. That chill night before going to sleep, Helen looked at the photograph of Robert on the bedside table. You would have liked to see me dancing again, she whispered, to see me living, finally. And she closed her eyes, not with the weight of loneliness as before, but with the lightness of someone who knows that tomorrow brings new possibilities, new fabrics to work with, new dances to dance, new stories to sew. Dear listeners, we hope that Helen's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. You can find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this narrative about new beginnings and self-discovery, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the second chances we all deserve. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're eager